what's up? It's your host, Torry, and who is ready to be petty? I'm so excited for this episode. It's probably one of my favorite that I've recorded in a really long time. But Sarah Hearon is here, and she's a senior staff writer at Us Weekly. Obviously, I love celebrity gossip, websites like Just Jared and Us and People, etc. So this was a really nice treat to chat with her. We very, very briefly talk about suicide in our highlights and lowlights of week 9 of Tayshia's season of The Bachelorette. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's there. And if you are having thoughts of suicide this holiday season or any other time, I know it can be a really tough time, please reach out to a crisis line. In Canada, the number is 833-456-4566. We will be getting the 988 number soon. That was just passed through government. And if you're in the US, the number is 988. We also talk about the Olivia Jade college admission scandal and Vanderpump Rules, which I'm so excited because I feel like a lot of listeners of the pod are Bravoholics, and it's kind of a blind spot for me. I watch some Bravo shows like Summer House and Shaw's of Sunset, but not too many, and I'm thinking about getting into them. So I'm very, very excited for you all to listen. If you enjoy my content, you can follow along on social media at RTBP Podcast and join our listener Facebook group and let me know what you want to hear about next. One last thing before we get to the show, because I am a shitty podcaster, something happened with the recording. I feel like I say this every week, but around the 30-minute mark, you'll notice that the quality drops off a little bit. I don't know what happened. And honestly, we'll probably never know. But the first 30 minutes are stellar. And it's kind of a bummer because once we get on a roll, the audio quality is like a little less great. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one bothered by this. But one day I'll figure it out. Okay, let's get to the show. I'm here with a very special guest, Sarah Hearon. From Us Weekly and the Hot Hollywood podcast and the Here for the Right Reasons podcast. Sarah, how are you?
I am so good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks. I'm doing well. I have to admit, your job is like my dream job. I feel like in an alternate life, I was also a senior staff writer at a tabloid magazine.
You know, I don't have too many complaints. I can't lie. I'm very lucky. It's been a very fun 3 years somehow at Us already, and the podcasts have just been like the greatest extension of that. So I love doing them.
Is tabloid magazine is that a passé term nowadays?
I
don't see it as like a bad thing because I love tabloids, but like maybe other people do.
Maybe. It's interesting because the digital space also, which I work primarily for the website, and then certain people like not my coworkers, like my family and friends call it like blogging, and I'm like, well, it's a little more than blogging. Like, not to put down bloggers, but like it's a very established magazine, whatever. It's a company. But then it's the same thing as like tabloid. I don't know. I take it all with it works, but tabloid, it's kind of funny, but it's technically a tabloid.
Yeah. I have been literally reading it since, I feel like I say this on my podcast all the time, but like it was such a big thing for my family to every road trip, every lake trip, every plane ride, just go to a store and pick up like all of the popular like People and Us and all Hello and all of those things, and just like absolutely like just dive into celebrity culture. So it makes sense that I host this podcast, I think.
Yeah, that's great that you found, a platform too. It's definitely interesting, and things are changing so much, and celebrities, clapping back and having social media. It's changed it a little bit. It's almost made it a little like, it's not bad because, you want them to be able to tell their side of the story, but people are so quick to deny things or change things. And it's been a very interesting time to figure it all out. But the magazine is still cool, but it's a lot of the online stuff, that we're moving toward.
Totally. Yeah. I'll miss that though. Like
Yeah.
if it ever, the print like version.
I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon unless someone knows something. Good. I don't know. But the airport, it's been an interesting year with sales and stuff for that too. So hopefully, if things pick up again, that'll help. But we'll see. I don't know. It's classic though. There's nothing better than just mindlessly looking at who wore it better. You know,
Yes.
the stars are just like us. Like there's just some classic stuff in there.
Totally. Yeah, I feel the same way. How did you get into writing and why did you want to work for us?
Um, I don't really know. I've always, it's weird. Like I look back at like growing up and I wanted to be like Rory Gilmore or like Kit Kittredge. Like all these like people who I loved were journalists. It's like so silly, but it's true. And then as I got older, I loved Juliana Rancic. Like who didn't want to be Juliana Rancic, right? Like it's like such a cliche thing to say, but like that's what I wanted. And I didn't really think it was possible, but I would write like blog posts and for websites that weren't paying me anything, but just like I loved TV. And so I would want to write like about The Bachelor or I don't know, I love like 90210 and like Dawson's Creek and Gossip Girl and all like the teen shows. So I would pitch stories to them and they would let me write it again for nothing. And then eventually it just, after I graduated college, I applied to like every job ever and I didn't get one for a long time. And then eventually, like probably like 6 months after I graduated, this Us opening, it was just for like a generic staff writer. And I didn't think I had any shot. And so whenever people ask me like for advice or anything, I always tell them there's no website too small to be writing for or too big. It's like you need your name out there, whether they're paying you or not, whether you think people are reading it or not. Like it's going to mean more if you're sending a sample from a website versus like your own blog or something. Not that that's not good too, but like it gives you a little bit more credit. So there's no website too small, but at the same time, like I never thought I was going to get the job at Us Weekly as a 23-year-old who just graduated from college, but I did. So you got to like give yourself credit, but also like you can't walk out thinking that your first story is going to be like on the cover of People magazine. That's not realistic either. So you gotta totally find the balance, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that is kind of common with podcasts. It's like, well, if you don't start, like you won't get anywhere. And I feel like people always ask like, what advice would you give? And it's like literally just start and just do something and like, things will open up. Opportunities will open up on the way. Who are your favorite celebrities to like follow and write about or talk about on your podcast?
Oh, there's so many. You know, it's funny. I kind of like became the reality TV girl. I didn't totally mean to. Like I've always liked reality TV. Like I love the Kardashians. I love The Bachelor. I've been watching Bravo for a while. But that was just like a void that the Us Weekly online team was like missing. And I knew things about all these people. So then I like really dove in. Like I was always a fan, but all of a sudden I had to like stalk them all the time. And sometimes it takes away from watching the actual show. You kind of grow to hate them. But other times it makes you love it because you get to meet them in real life or interview them and it changes a lot of what you think. So I love reality TV, but it's definitely become a little bit more of a job. So I love when I get to write stories about people that I don't necessarily talk about all the time. Like if there's a big like surprise divorce, like it's sad obviously when someone gets divorced, but like Kelly Clarkson's divorce, for example, is turning like super messy. And I got like her court documents and I got to like read them all. And I love like dissecting stuff like that and trying to figure out like what the hell is going on there, doing like comprehensive galleries of everything you need to know. That's always fun for me. Something just like surprising. Like this year has been so weird. Like when Kristen Cavallari and Jay Cutler broke up, that was a big one. Like now Tom and Erica from Beverly Hills. Like I love so sick to say like I love the divorce. Like I'm not rooting for any of the people to break up, but if they do, I want to find out why. I want to like figure out what's going on, and if there's like a big legal process, I think it's just like fascinating to dive into.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you're saying that you're not Rory Gilmore, but like you're doing research. Like this is a process.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, you know, I have a little bit of investigative journalist in me. It's more so stalking people's Instagrams and like reading court documents. It's less about hitting the town as I feel like what people used to do. But I think that's also just the way journalism has changed. Like it's kind of sad, but going on Instagram is like a huge part of my job. Like I have like the amount of people I follow that I probably normally wouldn't. You just have to you have to be on everything all the time.
Has anyone that you've met surprised you or for the better or for the worst?
Honestly, yeah, it's kind of lame, but I have had pretty pleasant experiences. I almost wish someone was going to be really mean to me because I feel like it'd be a better story. But a lot of times because I do so much with reality TV, especially like reality stars, they want to be talked about and written about. Like they're also more like they want Us Weekly to write about them. So it's kind of like a mutual thing. Like we need each other. So like at BravoCon and stuff, and like they're so happy to see you. Or like when I do the Bachelor podcast and I have alums on from past seasons to like recap this season with me, they wouldn't do it if they didn't want to. So that's like a nice thing. I've definitely had a few experiences of like people, the celebrity didn't like the story and have like tagged me on Instagram, and some of their like crazy fans have like come for me, and I'm like, oh my God, like who knew? What's her name from OC from like a million years ago even had fans still. I can't remember who it was. It was like one of the old OC housewives just like unleashed these women on me. And I was like, wow, like who knew God. She had fans to defend her, but it all worked out. But like things like that happen sometimes. And so it's more so on Instagram, but to your face, people are pretty nice to you.
Yeah, that's actually something that is like actually so fascinating that I didn't think about is you're right. Like the A-listers don't necessarily need us to write like a pleasant article about them, but these kind of C, D-list people in the reality TV world like truly do. Like they do need to make a good impression and like be kind and gracious and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you need to stay relevant. And if you're not on TV anymore, it's much harder to stay relevant. Like if you were The Bachelor a couple seasons ago, you're going to get your ads and stuff and you're going to have your time. But then if you don't go on the spinoffs, like if you settle down with someone who's not in the show, it's probably great for you, you know, mentally, but for your bank account, like you need something. And not that we're paying them to talk to them, but it's giving them another way to get back in the news, make headlines, and like be controversial. And there's a fine line for sure. And the Bachelor people fascinate me the most, I think, with trying to figure out, because in the Bravo world, it's kind of like you're in it, you're always in it. Like if you're a housewife and then you leave, like you're always, Andy will bring you back and watch Heaven's Live, or people are asking about you. There's like a need. People, I feel like, are more attached. On like in the Bachelor world, you kind of have your 15 minutes. And then if you don't find a way to stay relevant, like, I don't know, you got to go back to your real job.
Totally. Especially if you're like one of the middle of the road contestants that get the boot, like what happens next? Have you found, like, this is an especially interesting year because we didn't have Bachelor in Paradise, etc. Did you find that Bachelor Nation was like changing up their tactics to stay relevant, or was it just same old, same old?
You know what's so funny is at the beginning of the pandemic, my like favorite thing to do was screenshot like dumb Bachelor people like posting, like trying to be like, oh, it's so scary right now, like in their bikini, like holding pizza. Like I couldn't help myself. Like I was being such a troll, that's another thing you have to balance, right? Like you want to make fun of these people, but you also like want to work with them. And the Bachelor is weird. Usually they can be in on the joke. Like it's a fine line between being, you know, sarcastic and mean, or one or the other, but you know, that's a whole nother different conversation. But yeah, I think it's been interesting. I talked to Chris Harrison not that long ago on the Here for the Right Reasons Us Weekly podcast, and he was saying for Paradise it's going to be really hard to pick because we're going to have all the girls we met on Peter's season, now all the guys we just met on Claire/Tasha's season, Matt's season, and then another Bachelorette season before, if they can even get to the beach this summer. Hopefully they can. So that I feel like Peter's girls are going to be trying very hard to make sure no one forgets about them. That was a young group of girls who were like thirsty for Paradise, and I feel like if they're going to be very upset if they don't have their chance.
Totally. And I feel like that was like a learning moment for the Bachelor production team, just because they were so young and like so obviously want to be influencers, that maybe this season didn't play out as well as some of these other seasons. But yeah, like I can't wait to see what like Hannah Ann like drums up.
I know. And that was the other thing he was saying. He's like, who knows who's going to be single next June? I'm like, if I'm in The Bachelor, right. I've heard people tell me this before. I think like Becca Martinez was one. She was like made for Paradise, but she like got with her father of her two children in between the seasons. And she like literally had in a debate, like they had just started dating. And she was like, do I pursue this relationship with this guy? Like, or do I go to Paradise? And it sounds like silly because like the goal of Paradise is to find someone, but like Bachelor in Paradise can really change the way a lot of people see these people. You look at someone like Nick Viall, who got like a whole second career because of his Paradise stint. And like, yeah, it's silly because the whole point is to find love. And if she found love, but it's a big decision. And she obviously stayed, and now she has her two kids, and I'm sure she's happy she did. But what if that relationship didn't work out? Like you have to hope it'll come back around. But yeah, like a Hannah Ann, Victoria F., all those girls, Kelsey, his whole top, besides Kelly, who he's with now, I feel like want to be in Paradise. So it's going to be really interesting to see how many of them get to go.
Do you think that Hannah Ann is like too good for Bachelor in Paradise now? Like too big? She's hit like over 1 million followers on Instagram, which is again wild for some of these contestants.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's one of the ones who I wouldn't be surprised if she's dating someone. We've seen her like out with like some NFL players. I don't think anything's really stuck. She's still really young, but I heard someone say this. I don't remember who said it, but it was something like about how being on TV keeps you so much more relevant than you even realize. And it's like, yeah, you can have all the Instagram followers you want, but like people forget about you, and you're you can still have the number, but like your engagement rates and stuff, like
Right.
when we're seeing you all the time, like so I think it's like people underrate how much it actually is, like the exposure of being on TV and being back in. So I think she'd still go, but it would be interesting to see if this time, in a year from now, if she's still, I guess 6 months from now, if she's still single, because I feel like she's gonna have a lot of opportunities. She could be one of the ones that in a few years from now they call back in to be a Bachelorette or something.
Right.
But I still don't know why she was at spotted filming this season. I feel like everyone forgot about that, and I don't think she I think that was just a mess with us. I gotta figure that out. It's back on my list.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because there was like so many Bachelor alums that we saw pictures of, but like most of them, we've seen on the show now, like Ashley and Deanna,
Pappas.
Sorry, Deanna. You were actually one of my like deep cut faves, but
she's great. I've actually talked to her a few times. She's one of the alums who really leans into it. It's like a Trista. They're like early Bachelorettes who genuinely just have like love for the franchise and love for the girls. And I think they want to like guide them, but they also know that it's such a different show now. So it's so interesting to talk to some of the OGs and have them watch the show now, because they're like, oh, that would have never happened on my season, or the comparison. And it's fascinating to me that show has been on for so long and it's more popular than ever. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but I also can't look away. So
totally, yeah, I'm in the same boat. And I like when they do lean into it, when that's what they're like known for. I was just listening to Danny Pellegrino's podcast, and he was saying like it's so nice when it is a two-way street when you're getting press, where it's like, well, we want to talk about what you're known for, and you can also sell whatever you're doing currently, but like we need both for this to work. And I thought that was a really good point. So I do like when they get into it a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's such a funny thing too, because as from the journalist perspective, and first of all, I love Danny Pellegrino, he's awesome. But there's nothing like, you get pitched people all the time, right? And it's like they're promoting like Clorox wipes or something, and you have to ask them about Clorox for the first couple questions, and then of course you're gonna go into like if they're dating someone or if they have kids or a husband, like whatever. And then there's always like that one question that you want to ask so bad, like, but you don't know if how they're gonna react. And there's nothing worse than when they like shut you down when you're bringing up like the thing that they're so famous for, but there's nothing better when they embrace it. Or like, I'm obsessed with the original 90210, and I got to talk to Torry Spelling and Jenny Garth a few weeks ago, and they have a podcast now about 90210. So the whole time I could ask them anything I wanted because it was about 90210, and that's rare. Like normally I would be talking to Torry Spelling probably about Clorox wipes, and then at the end try to be like, where would Donna and David be now? You know what I mean? But instead the whole time I got to geek out. So it's a fine line. And the Bachelor people, again, they're reality stars. So the smart ones, your Nick Viall, the ones who are still, your Ashley I, who are still pretty relevant in today's like pop culture, have shows where they do full Bachelor recaps and stuff, because people want to hear that. Like Ben Higgins still talking about Lauren in his podcast is kind of absurd since they're both totally moved on, but I also would be mad if he didn't. You know what I mean? So it's a weird thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you just have to give us something, because it's really what we don't want to hear about the Clorox wipes. Like,
yeah, sorry. Oh, we're giving Clorox a lot of free ads here. But yeah.
Yeah, ads. Ad space. Yeah, definitely. One more question, and then we can finally get to some of these juicier topics. But are you going to watch Nick Viall's movie Christmas Cruise?
Oh, okay. I am a big Hallmark Lifetime movie person, and I actually have that movie came out a few years ago, and I never saw it, and I just found it on I think it's airing again this weekend because he reposted it. I'm taping that, and Chris Soules, Farmer Chris, Prince Farming, Gone Wrong, Bachelor a few years ago, is in some a movie on the same network that's airing this weekend, so I'm taping that too. So I will have full recaps on my Instagram, I'm sure.
Okay, amazing. Where can people follow you?
At Sarah Hearon, Hearon. I will be posting. I love those stupid movies. They just make me and my roommate just like play drinking games and go along with it. And like I would die if I just randomly turned that on and saw Chris Soules, so I know it's coming. But either way, you just never know who's going to pop up in one of those movies. And I can't believe that they're giving that. It's on like the ION network. I don't even know what that is, but I'm here for it.
That's amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit about this season of The Bachelorette, just a check-in, some highlights and lowlights. Then we're going to talk about Olivia Jade on the Red Table Talk. And then finally, Brittany and Jack's exit. That's hard to say in a row, but their exit from Vanderpump Rules.
Love it.
So how are you feeling about Tayshia's season of The Bachelorette? Have you enjoyed this season?
I have. I think it was actually a very fun summer trying to figure out what was going on. I think that might have actually been my highlight just because it was so crazy and it was something to lean into, and it was like a gift without giving us a gift since there was no Paradise and there was supposed to be like summer games. Like this was going to be like an insane amount of Bachelor content, and instead we just like played guessing games all summer, and I actually really liked it. I enjoyed Claire and Dale's episodes just because they were so insane, and I love when like the internet is all in it together and people are like, what are we watching? So I low-key miss that because Tayshia, I feel like she's like too good at it. Like she seems to be such a smart, genuinely kind, nice person, and she's giving all these guys such an opportunity to open up. We're seeing the show get super deep, and it's great. I'm just a little bored, like, and I say that but I always want what I can't have. I just said that on my show this week. I was like, if they're being petty, I'm like, these relationships are never gonna work because they're only talking about stupid stuff. But now that they're getting serious, I'm like, I kind of want them to fight. Like, so I don't know, but it's overall I think Tayshia's a genuinely great person, and she's doing a very good job. Like she's what you want your Bachelorette to be. She's kind of like gold star, I feel like.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think she'll be in like my top 5 Bachelorettes of all time. And I say the same thing. She's too good for the show, and these relationships are probably too good for the show. And it makes for like not as interesting TV. I'm in the same boat. Like I love when it's more of a shit show, and I like hate it. Like that's more fun. But yeah, I think for me, this season has kind of been a letdown for the exact same reasons that you're talking about. Is like the summer was so fun. And I feel like lately, or maybe just over time, I've just so appreciated everything off camera way more than like any reality TV I like actually watch. Like that's the fun stuff for me, is like the social media drama, the tabloid stuff, the paparazzi pictures.
Yeah. I mean, people say that like about, like I remember when Beverly Hills Housewives was airing this time last year, I feel like Us Weekly was very much on the story about Denise and Brandy, and it was so fun to be writing about and hearing all the sides and like all the stuff. Or like even when the Puppygate happened, like there was a lot of stuff I was hearing, and it was like so exciting to write about. But then when it aired, it was so anticlimactic, and like it's a double-edged sword because I'm one of those people who's like ruining it, but it's fun to ruin and it's fun to hear and it's fun to watch play out, even if it's like a different outlet breaking all the news. But then, or like right now with Atlanta, like I feel like when we watch this like stripper party, it's going to be like disappointing, Bachelorette gate, whatever, because we know everything. So it's weird because it's like I'm contributing to it and I like it, but then when I watch the show, I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't know that. We're missing the shock. And The Bachelor definitely has that. Like, imagine if some way, somehow, the Claire thing didn't get out and we would have been so shook. It's a different way to watch the show.
I know. I say that to myself every single time. Like, if you didn't know these spoilers, you would enjoy it. And then I'm like on reality Steve. Like,
I know. I know.
In the next breath.
That's a whole nother thing. But I will say with Tayshia's, as anticlimactic as some of the episodes have been, because they've been very serious and very heavy, I genuinely feel like, I don't know if any of these relationships are built to last per se, but she's definitely giving every guy a fair chance. So more so, I'm kind of interested, like, I don't know for sure who she picks, and I don't know if I could guess right. Whereas in the past, I feel like it's been so obvious. You're Caitlyn and Sean, you're Jordan and JoJo, Colton and Cassie, Peter threw us for a loop. But like, there's been a few that have been so obvious lately that it's kind of nice to see her really be the Bachelorette. Like, she's definitely exploring all these relationships. We're not getting like BS, I feel like, but then I also don't know if I think any of them are going to last because it all still feels rushed. So I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I would be really surprised if there's a proposal at the end of the season because of the truncated like time that Tayshia has had. But you're right. Like, I could probably guess the top 2 or 3 maybe, but I have no idea who she ends up with. What was your highlight of this week's episode? It was pretty heavy.
Ed finally going home?
Yes. Like Ed leaving.
I can't stand Ed. I don't even know why. He just drives me insane. Like, I got irrationally angry. And it's always the ones who usually like I hate on the show that I like the most in real life. So he's probably gonna be a very nice person and whatever. I'll probably talk to him in like a year from now and have to apologize for everything I said. But he was annoying. Bennett is also kind of driving me crazy, but I did like the surprise of when he showed up at the end, because when he said hey, I was like, oh, I don't know who it is. Like I thought JPJ. Yeah. I knew it wasn't the ex-husband, because I know that whole theory was, I knew it was wrong from the beginning, but I still like had a little hope. You know when you think you know, but you're like, what if there's a chance that somehow ABC is going to pull a fast one? Like I always usually know because of like my job, but then I still fall for the freaking promos half the time. Me too. Yeah. So I don't know. So that was exciting. I liked the end when Bennett showed up, but I also hope he doesn't stay, because I hate when they like bring them back. You can't like go back on your decisions. I don't like that.
Totally. And I don't think she will. I don't think she's that type of bachelorette, but it was just so funny. And I saw this on the internet, so I won't take credit, but someone said when Bennett appeared, like just that he has the absolute face of someone like lingering in the shadows and like appearing out of nowhere. And I was like, yes, he does.
Do you like him? Because I feel like the internet is so split. Like I hated him, then I liked him for like one episode, and then I've actually been kind of annoyed with him ever since. Like the Noah thing, like I don't know, like he just kind of bothered me. Then I saw his TikTok and it like solidified. But I feel like some people really still think he's funny and like are really like leaning into him.
No, as soon as I know that like it's contrived, I like hate it. And I think at the beginning of the season, I was like, this is just him being himself. Like, do you remember like I think it was Ashley S, the girl with the onions?
Yeah.
Like I was like, that seems so just her, and it doesn't seem contrived, and I'm obsessed with it. As soon as Bennett with the book and stuff like that, I was just like, this is just too much. Like,
I think he got a little too into it, and I think the producers took advantage of that. They were like, oh, this kid's we're gonna get him even, he's already fired up and like way too obsessed with being on the show. I think like he drank the Kool-Aid. I think he got there. He got laughs at that roast, and there's more time than ever for the guys to just be sitting around because they're not traveling. And I think then the producers got into his ear. I feel like Bennett has had more screen time than like Tayshia. So literally it's been a lot. So I'm ready for him to go. But
yeah, and I also find that like when you know that you're not going to win, or you have an inkling that it's not you, a lot of people decide to go like a different route and
just like, to stay on the show.
Yeah, like villain or hero or just like crazy antics. So I don't know if that's what like switched, but yeah, I think he definitely drank the Kool-Aid too. So it'll be interesting to like check in with him in a few months and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm kind of over him, but I did really like him in the beginning. I thought he was really entertaining.
It's been a journey.
I think my highlight was Ben's conversation about suicide. I know that this isn't like a super fun podcast topic, but similar to like the Black Lives Matter conversation that Ivan and Tayshia had, it's so shocking to me that stuff like this is being shown on like primetime TV. And I thought that Tayshia's response was like a really good response for a partner and like someone who's in a relationship. And I just think that this conversation could reduce the stigma about talking about if you have thoughts of suicide. And he also talked about how like things that have helped him, like therapy, which I'm really hoping normalizes people going to therapy.
Yeah, Ben has been a gift. I mean, eating disorders, no one talks about men having eating disorders, like, and I'm sure there's there's not probably statistics even about it, because I doubt a lot of men probably won't, be open about it. So it's been 2020 has been a crazy year. So it would have been weird if it wasn't reflected on The Bachelorette, like a show with our second Black lead, and Tayshia and all of these guys who you have to applaud them. It's as easy as to poke fun at Bachelor contestants, like you said. I mean, it's a bold, it's a lot. It's sometimes awkward to watch, but it's important. That's also important. I'm very curious to see if it's going to continue into Matt James' season, because my gut tells me it's not. I feel like that's going to lean into like, it's almost like The Bachelor kind of feels like they need to do certain things, like they do things to check a box. And I think those conversations did come up organically. I don't think they were seeking them out, but then they definitely took the chance to highlight it, which was nice. But I also don't know if it was like for the right reasons. You know what I mean?
Totally. Why do we have this gut feeling that Matt's season is going to be like, I don't know. I totally think it is going to be superficial and like kind of back to the old like talking in general statements, talking about only our relationship in like in Bachelor terms, like etc. I don't know. I feel the same way, but I have like no evidence.
Yeah, I don't have evidence either. I think that a huge part of it is the Bachelor is always a little sillier because the girls, it's like you just like fall into the catty stereotypes and they like they build it up. So I think that's part of it. And I also think when the woman's in charge, like a Bachelorette's like it's not a like coincidence that the first impression rose winner either wins or goes far besides Tayshia's, but that's a little different. Like Claire and Dale, obviously, like when the woman's in charge, I think it's just different, and they run the show, and they always pick these like. One thing I always say about the show when people say like it's too silly or whatever is they always pick these awesome women who are like strong, badass, beautiful, have careers to be the Bachelorette. Like there's kind of a trend with that at least. And then I think the women a lot of times bring out the best in these guys and these contestants. Whereas not to say that the Bachelors are bad people by any means, but I mean you're you're Colton, you're Ari, Peter, I mean, Juan Pablo, like they're not all, gold stars for who you kind of want to be with, which is ironic because it's the whole point of the show. So I don't know enough about Matt James to know, but I also think since he's new to reality TV, it's going to be maybe some superficial stuff too. Like he's not comfortable in front of the cameras. I think he's gorgeous and I'm sure it'll be interesting, but there's something about the Bachelor when the guy is in charge that just like, it doesn't have they're two different shows in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah, I hate when people are like, oh, the Bachelorette is so much more boring, and it's like, well, that's because the girl like usually knows what she wants and like is normal and like too good for the show, and the men are trash. And then when the Bachelor is so entertaining, again, it's the women bringing it and the Bachelor just being like, I don't know, whatever.
Usually overwhelmed and not knowing what he signed up for. And there's a reason that there's more successful Bachelor couples where they've gone back with the runner-up or their fifth place. Then we have 3 of those now, and one, Catherine and Sean, where they picked them. And then there's several Bachelorette couples still together. So and you watch it for different reasons. If you want the love story, the Bachelorette is more for you. If you want the drama, the Bachelor is more for you. I like all of it. So but again, I always want what I can't have. Whatever's in front of me, I'm like, oh, I want the drama. But then during this season, I guarantee I'm going to be like, oh, remember when we got deep on Tayshia's season? Like, I missed that.
Totally. What was your low light of this episode?
Oh God. Probably like anytime Blake Moynes was still getting screen time.
Yeah. Why do people like him? A lot of my friends really like him.
Really?
And I don't see it.
I don't get him. I think Claire and him had some sort of connection. I don't know why Tayshia still has him around. And I also, Zach C doesn't do it for me. I don't really get him. And I definitely think he was lying about the whole cheating on 6th grade. Like, I think that was a cover.
Yes. Okay. That is my low light because I think that was just not fun. Like, okay, I hate people. Like, I literally hate people when they're like, yeah, like my first boyfriend was in grade 6. It's like, no, that's not real. That's not a relationship. Or like the cheating thing, like in grades, like, no.
I love that you're saying grade 6, by the way, because I know you're from Canada and I'm not, but I love Degrassi more than anything. And they always say that in Degrassi. And I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm talking to like Emma Nelson right now.
Yeah, because you say 6th grade, right?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. We say the opposite. But literally, I was just like, that's such a cop-out, probably fake. You've probably cheated on other women. I'll say it. And
yeah, I think so too.
And like, I don't know. I hate when people like are like, yeah, when I was dating this person, like in elementary school and stuff, it's like, no, that's not dating. Like,
yeah, I think the guys really fell for the lie detector, which was interesting because a lot of times, it's such a trope now in reality TV, and you can always argue that the lie detector is inaccurate. Not that that's something a hill you want to die on. Like, if you lied about something and it calls you out, then you don't want to like make the whole thing about that. But that is technically a thing. Like, we don't know how accurate these are. But the guys were all very honest, almost to a fault. The Riley thing was weird, and Zach, like, I think felt like he had to tell the truth. And then obviously she was like, what the hell? Like, she didn't take it well. So that's why he came up, in my opinion, with this allegedly fake story, or maybe it's real, but I think there's something else to it. And he also like was crying randomly in the middle of the episode about his parents. Like, I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me. I think it's, again, admirable that he spoke about his addiction on the show. And it's just another, that's great. And I'm glad he, is sober and has his rehab and stuff. That's very cool. But I don't know if he was like perfect for this show.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the polygraph thing, it's like, we know that they're not reliable. And also it was a fucking MacBook hooked up to like some.
And it was like JoJo Fletcher just being like, ooh, like making a face. Like, come on.
Like it wasn't even like a polygraph, like professional. So
No.
yeah, that was wild to me. Before we move on, who is your winner pick for this season?
I'm sticking with Brendan. I said it a while ago when they had that first one-on-one date, and she was like, he could be my husband. Then we haven't seen much of him ever since, and I think that's strategic because after the Claire and Dale of it all, they needed this season to be the opposite and show us all the guys, which they've done a very good job at. Like I said before, this is the first season in a while where I'm not totally confident, but I'm gonna stick with him. I love Ben, but I think he's definitely getting his heart broken. I wish she would pick Ivan, but I don't think she's going to.
Me too. I'm like already preparing myself for tears because I really want her to pick him. But yeah, Brendan's my winner pick too. I didn't draft him initially, but just after their first date, I'm like, this has to be it. And I'm holding to that. So
yeah. And I think they have a cute connection. I don't like die for him either, but I think when you have Ben and Ivan and Riley, like she's got great guys, but she's leaning in towards the Zach C and the Brendan. So I think it's going to be one of them.
Totally. Yeah. I feel that too. So Olivia Jade.
I'm obsessed with this story.
I am obsessed. So I obviously covered this original story, the college admission scandal, on the pod now years ago. I work at a college, so it's like extremely interesting to me. And Olivia Jade has re-entered like socialite society and went on the Red Table Talk this week. I watched it last night while I was in the bathtub, and it was the 30 minutes flew by. So good.
So good.
What were your initial thoughts? Like,
can I just say first, I remember it was March 12th, 2019, because I'm a freak and I have certain dates that I have to write so many times. Like I know the date, like Tristan Thompson cheated on Chloe when she was pregnant. Like it was April 10th. And then True was born April 12th. Like certain dates stick with me because I write them so many times. And the college cheating scandal, I don't know how I ended up on this beat, but like I wrote the first story when it came out, like that Felicity Huffman and Lori were indicted, like for us, not the first story in general, but like when it broke, when we covered it. And I've been writing about it like nonstop ever since. I'm obsessed with it all. And for whatever reason, I had watched Olivia Jade videos before. Like, I don't even know why. Like I go on these YouTube, like spirals, and I'd stumbled upon her before. I'm like, why is Aunt Becky's daughter showing me how to wear mascara? But I just like couldn't look away. So when this whole thing happened, I was like, oh, I know exactly which videos that she talked about how she didn't care about school. I knew, and it was like sick. I like went to my editor and I was like, this video, like halfway through, like she said this absurd thing. Like it was, so I was like the person she was talking about in this thing, like people calling out my old videos. I'm like, that was me. Like I called attention to those. Like I'm sure other outlets did too, but I swear we were first because it was like the day after. And I was like, oh, I know exactly where she talked about how she hates school and her parents are making her go.
Yes.
So, oh God, it's just so nice to finally hear from her after all this time. Like 20 months later, she was so quiet, which I understand why. I think the timing is hilarious that her parents are in jail and can't stop her because I don't think they would have wanted her to do this. We haven't heard anything from Lori or Massimo this whole time. Like Lori deleted her Instagram and has been gone. The only time we've seen her, I got to be on the Zoom for their virtual hearing. And it was like seeing them reemerge. Like, we've seen paparazzi pictures, like hearing her talk and like whatever. It was so crazy. So I felt the same way about Olivia. It was just like so weird to hear her finally acknowledge this whole thing.
Totally. How do you think she did?
I mean, I think she actually did a pretty good job. It's a pretty rough situation. You know, I think one of the most interesting parts was hearing Jada Pinkett-Smith and her mother and Willow talk about her before she even came out.
Yes.
That was like intense, and everything that her mom was saying, like you can't deny it. Like she's right. Like why are we giving this girl a platform? But that's kind of what Red Table Talk is. Like it's the conversation, and I think that show is smart, and it was smart to have her on for both sides. Like it was definitely a PR move, but for both of them, like, you know. So I think she did a good job. She was very apologetic. She didn't try to, you know, really, she owned it pretty well, I thought. And if she did anything less, though, she would have gotten panned. So she had no choice, but I thought she did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought again, like she's 21, she was really articulate. And I don't know if that was like training beforehand or whatnot. I'm sure she had
coached
training. Yeah. And was coached, but she was super articulate. She was super confident. And she did a really good job of laying out what her reactions were and like step by step what her thought process was. I have a few questions. So she said, like, I thought that everyone, like, in my circle donated to schools that they wanted to get into and bought things and built libraries or whatever. So I didn't realize that that was wrong. But I'm like, that's sus. And then two, what about the fucking rowing bit?
Oh my God. I was screaming at my computer when I was watching this. I'm like, it can't end. You have to ask specifically about the pictures, because she got so lucky that they didn't bring that up, because everything, or even the fake resume, because she mentioned at one point, I saw my application online and that wasn't what I put. So clearly there was things being altered, but there's also in their court documents too, there was an email exchange between Lori, Olivia, and her dad. And it was something about her meeting with her guidance counselor and her parents advising her to, kind of play dumb. Like, don't tell him all of your plans. Like, so they clearly knew something was a little sketchy here. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, I was innocently, like, yeah, is it wrong, of course, that people get advantages for donating libraries and stuff? Of course, that's a whole other conversation about education. But to tell your daughter to lie to her guidance counselor and give permission, I'm sure they had to give some sort of consent for him to just change all of her documents or to pose for that picture. Like, there is something to be said for, like, your gut feeling has to be like, that's weird that my mom wants me to tell my guidance counselor, like, I'm going to a different school than I think I am. Like, I'm not good enough for that school. So, but then again, I mean, it's naive to say, but like, you're 17, you trust your parents. Your mom's Aunt Becky. Like, you think she's lying to you? Like, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done if I was in that situation. I feel like my gut would have told me this is wrong, but I also probably would have listened to my parents.
Totally, you're right. Especially she talked about how close she was with her parents, and yeah, like, that wouldn't have been me, and maybe that's why it's a hard time for me to, like, empathize with her, because it's like I filled out all my own college applications.
Same.
And like, I rely on my parents and my parents support me, but they're not the only people I'm talking to about things, or like, I make a lot of my own decisions even at that age. And so I just found it, like, so weird. But you're right, if you, like, do really rely on your parents, plus if your parents are telling you something, why would you ever be like, is this weird, or like or something like that?
I know, like, you don't think your parents are, like, involving you in this, like, national scam, which they were. But it's also interesting, like, with the red table talk of it all, like, as I thought it was great for, like I said, good PR for both, but at the same time, it's like, it was hard because one part of them was really leaning into, like, overall there's a problem, and like Olivia Jade has kind of become the face of white privilege, and that's true, and everything they were saying was true. But then there was a few moments when they tried to get into the nitty gritty of, like, the actual case, but they didn't lean into either side completely. So that's why things like the rowing pictures, I think, which, I mean, would have been my first question for her, was what did you think you were doing when you took that picture, were lost because they were having a bigger conversation about education and privilege, which is important too. But I don't know if, like, Olivia Jade is where you're going to get your answers for that. So I think maybe they could have leaned in a little bit more about the case specifically, but it also probably would have tripped. Like, she got lucky that they as hard as they were on her. Like, did you watch Stassi on Tamron Hall?
No.
Okay, well, that was like the most uncomfortable thing in the world, and Tamron Hall really, like, went in for it, and Stassi got, like, flustered, and it was, like, cringy but necessary.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of wish they did that with her, which is mean, but like,
no, same.
Like, I think that brings me into, like, my next question was, like, is this the right outlet for, well, what's her angle? Is it a comeback into influencing again in her YouTube channel, or is it just, like, personal redemption and she wants to move on? Like, A, what's her angle? And B, was this the right outlet for her?
I mean, 100% at least part of her angle was PR. There's no reason you would flee. As they said to her, they're like, you're going to be fine. Like, you don't need a career. It's kind of sad at 21 to just never do anything again. Like, I don't know how that would go, but yeah, I think, like I said, it was a PR move for both of them, technically. Like, Red Table Talk, I think it's definitely successful, but every once in a while you have your Jordan Woods episode, that episode where her and Will Smith talked about them, like, her open relationship, and this one are the ones that, you're going to remember. Yeah. So it worked. They're using each other, which is important to recognize as a viewer. But I think overall, like, it definitely made Olivia look good. I don't know if that's good or bad. When I say she did a good job, I mean, like, she leaned into the questions they asked her and she owned it. But if they asked her a little bit harder questions, it probably would have been a disaster on her part, but even more interesting to watch. So it's also like a 21-year-old girl. It's not like they had Lori in the room who they could question, or Massimo. Like they had to go really hard on them. She's like a weird middle ground in this, you know, like, so it's very interesting, but I'm very interested to see what she does next. Like, I don't know how long do you wait to post the YouTube video? Like, how long do you give people to quote unquote forgive you?
Yes, that's what I want to know. Like, are we getting a YouTube video like a week after Red Table Talk thought,
right?
Like that? Or is it going to be like, hey, here's my like Christmas makeup routine for like, or New Year's like outfit haul?
Right. Like, I don't think it's going to be a video of her, like, because she was mentioning her charity work she's doing. Like, I don't think she's going to take her YouTube channel to her charity acts. And then if she did that, we'd be like, oh, you're doing it for the video. So it's like, she can't really win. Like, I don't feel bad for her. I don't say that because I feel bad for her, but like, she is in like a weird place of what does she do? Because it's stupid if all of a sudden she's just posting her makeup routine again, but it's also transparent if she's like posting about charity. So she's kind of in a stuck. I don't know what to do. Totally.
Yeah. I just thought that it was an interesting choice because, like, why wouldn't she go on like the Ellen DeGeneres show or something?
Like, she did, because it's more credit. Like, you have Jada Pinkett-Smith forgiving you, then Ellen. Everybody hates Ellen now. Like, no one, you know, Ellen forgiving you means nothing. People would make fun of it. So it was good for her that she got her team and Red Table Talk's team to agree to it, because it's definitely more of a, like, see, that's the same reason why I think Stassi went on Tamron Hall. But it sort of backfired. Like, she needed to talk to a Black woman about how she mistreated another Black woman. And it's transparent. But when she got held accountable by that Black woman, it was a little uncomfortable. And she kind of retreated back, and she's kind of laid low again, not as far as like social media, but as far as announcing projects or doing anything. Like, I think Stassi kind of thought that was going to be her redemption tour. I don't know if Olivia thinks this is. And then it's like, where do they go from there? Like, when can they post about their podcast coming back or their YouTube channel coming back? Like, I don't know. And Stassi being pregnant helps her, at least, because she's now gonna have like a mommy blogger vibe. But I don't know. Really? It's so into cancel culture is horrible but fascinating, especially when it happens to someone who, I don't know if anyone quote unquote deserves it, but those were two big scandals, more so than like one tweet when you're like 16 or something. So those are going to be interesting. And everything comes back though, unless you're like Harvey Weinstein, which obviously you shouldn't come back. They all kind of get a moment. So I'm fast. Those are my two probably biggest ones that I want to see what's going to happen to Stassi and Olivia Jade. They should team up.
Me too. Yeah, I cannot wait to see what they do next. I really implore both of them to like lean into the discomfort though, and like actually make change on the things that they're like saying they're going to. Cause I think that was the other thing, like when she was just like, yeah, a few weeks ago, I like did some charity work, which like I went to an after school care program and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, that for me, that's like not it. Like, I just like, I wish she came here and she said like, I read this book. I listened to this. I recognize these privileges create like a system of oppression. And maybe I'm asking way too much. I also work in social justice education. So
you're like actually making real change. And you're like, Olivia, your one visit to the after school program, like, I don't know if it's going to do anything, girl.
Literally, like, and like, I'm not an expert of like what you should do when you like cause harm and stuff like per se. But like, for me, this just like wasn't it. Like, a year later, you spent an afternoon with some like underprivileged kids is not the thing I'm looking for. Like, I'm going to need a lot more than that. So
yeah,
I think she did like acknowledge privilege and like her wealth and her whiteness, but like, I just wish there was like more. So that was like another question that I had was like, is this awareness of your privilege? Because this is what we're talking about this year with Kim's birthday and tweets and stuff like that. Is the awareness of your privilege enough nowadays? Because for me, it's not. You need to like make action after you come to like pieces of like these moments of awareness. So for me, yeah, what do you think? Like, do you see real change coming from her that like she has the power to influence a lot of young people in her social circle, etc. And like, I just don't see that. And maybe this isn't a question.
No, I know what you mean. I think it's one of those things, because I was saying before, it's like if she all of a sudden, her platform is all about charity, everyone's like, I remember Olivia Jade specifically, like when the Black Lives Matter protests and movement was happening, she was like posting about it and then everyone was mocking her. which it's like an easy target, right? But I think for her, if she wants to prove that she is leaning into it and making a change, then she has to keep going back and she has to take the punches and the jokes. And then you can look back years later, look at how much I learned, and you can just show people that you were doing it. And maybe don't always do it in front of the cameras, but like document, like, you know, find a way to share enough where people see you're making a difference and showing what you learn, but also you're not, you know, you have to take it. Like, people are going to think you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you know, in Bachelor terms, like you're not there genuinely, but you have to prove you are. And that's going to take a lot of time. Totally. So I think this year, especially, like I said too, there was a few people, like there was this weird grace period of like, in like June when everything was happening, where it's kind of like, if you owned what you did wrong a long time ago, well, people were willing to forgive you as long as like you don't take another misstep as far as like things like race and privilege and everything is concerned. So people who didn't lean into that are screwed, because there was like this whole grace period of like, and none of us deserved it. Like no white person deserved it by any means, but it kind of happened. Yeah. So if you leaned into it correctly from a PR standpoint, and like, and if you meant it, like that's the other thing, like it'll come through. Like we see through PR stunts all the time. So it's a long-term thing. And I think if she wants a real career, she's going to have to just put up with the jokes and people making fun of her and do it and prove it. And then that's the habit. Like, it's kind of just, it is what it is, but I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Totally. I agree with you 100%. And I wonder if I'm reading into it too much, but like when I think about this getting scheduled, I think about it being scheduled a few weeks ago. And then she was like, a few weeks ago, I was volunteering. And like, I just was like, I don't know. I don't know. I just would have wanted to hear a little bit more from her. But and I always say this, I always go back and forth because, again, I work at a college, so I'm working with, not always, but primarily like 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And I'm always like, well, maybe she's young and I'm asking too much. But then I'm like, no, you're still like a young adult, so you should still be held accountable. And yeah, I want to see more. And obviously, I wish her the best. I wish everybody the best. But
yeah, I should be interesting. I mean, Stassi was the same way. She's like went on Tamron Hall and she talked a lot about like her coach. And I'm like, and Tamron Hall was like, how do you find a coach for like not being racist? So it was interesting, but it's like they hit their talking points. So now we see, you know, is she still working with that coach, but she's not talking about it? Like, I kind of doubt it. Like, but maybe she is, and maybe somehow we'll learn that. I don't know. But, you know, you have Kristen Doty out here still like defending what they did. So it's like, all right, you clearly didn't learn anything. It all comes out. Jackson Brittany, which I know was something else we're going to talk about. Like, it's an interesting time, and we're holding all of our reality stars to different standards, and every network within the same network, like Bravo, has made very interesting decisions all over the board with their programming after everything happened. And I don't know, Jackson Brittany are the latest of like, there's more to that story, I think.
Totally. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question about Olivia Jade, and then we can dive into Brittany and Jax, just because it's from a listener. If you were Olivia Jade, would you have picked this PR opportunity, or would you have tried something else?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, would I have picked that pink suit? And I would have said yes. No. Oh, God, I don't know. I think it was definitely smart to lean in. I mean, I can see through it, but I think a lot of people probably maybe don't necessarily. The Red Table Talk, I think, was a smart platform. I think I know why she waited, which was because her parents probably didn't let her. But if I were her, I would have not waited 20 months to talk about it. And like you said, come out with my one charitable act. Like, I would have probably tried to have like a whole thing of what I did, or maybe do the Red Table Talk the way she did and then posted her own YouTube video like right after, of like everything she's learned, like a lengthy conversation, because, you know, Red Table Talk has to get the headlines. They have to ask about things like her college application and stuff and how the scam happened. But if she's trying to prove, well, how she changed, if I were her, I probably would have then everything I couldn't have said on Red Table Talk to promote myself, I probably would have done on my own channel. And, you know, that might be like a cynical PR thing to say, but like, that's probably what I would have done.
She still has like 2 million YouTube followers. Like, no one's unfollowed her per se.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I hope she uses that huge platform for good. And yeah, can't wait to see what she does next. But I hope she does follow through on some of these learnings, but only will tell.
I'll be waiting for that YouTube to go off, because she posted like one video about like her skincare, and I was like, oh, this is tone deaf. But then at the same time, like I knew she couldn't say anything. Like I don't know what I would do if I was that girl, but I think she's got to lean into it, and she's got to be honest and transparent, because otherwise people aren't going to believe her if she says she's doing this stuff. Like it's kind of sad to show the receipts, but like she's kind of got to show the receipts that she's changed. Like
Totally. And that's a good point. So I looked last night because I was like, yeah, I think she posted a few months ago a skincare routine. It's gone.
interesting. And she does have still over 1 million followers on Instagram,
Yeah.
but she still has her comments restricted. So it's like, you gotta let people, it's bad. And you don't want to say, I'm not promoting bullying or anything crazy, but she's got to be able to take the criticism, like, and go with it. Like you can't, it's just not realistic. She can't be limiting her comments forever. If she wants a career, if she wants to just fade into oblivion and be a normal person, that's totally fine. But if she's going to try to like make it in this business, then she's going to have to open herself up to like all the backlash again.
Yeah, I agree about like, don't bully people online, but you're totally right.
Please don't.
Made a mistake in real life and someone said, hey, this hurt, this affected me, this impacted me, this was wrong, etc., you would hopefully like listen with open ears and an open heart. And yeah, maybe limiting some of those things. I was kind of cutting off, that opportunity. Anyways, Brittany and Jax leaving Vanderpump Rules. It's the end of an era. Full transparency, I have never watched Vanderpump Rules. And
wow.
I know. I think I'm going to start because I feel like it's the one reality TV show that I don't watch that everyone talks about. But my listeners always ask me to cover Bravo stuff, especially stuff from Vanderpump Rules. And obviously, because I'm in this world, I know a lot about it without having to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have to fill in some of these details for me. But everyone's going to want your opinion. What happened? Did they leave? Were they fired? Were their contracts not renewed?
Bravo in general does this thing where they let their talent announce their exit. So we use words like exit, departure, and from everything I know, which isn't everything at all, but it's a fancy way of saying fired. And that's what they do with Housewives too, and Vanderpump, Southern Charm, whatever show. They have contracts with them and they pick them up or they don't. And they clearly, this show has gone through, it hasn't been on the air since April, but it's been in the news every month since, because starting with Stassi and Kristen and Max and Brett, and then everyone waiting for them to make a decision with people like Jax and Brittany. And I think Jax and Brittany assumed they were coming back. Everything we heard was they were planning on coming back. It was all just a matter of the pandemic. Also, that show was about, even though it's not about a restaurant at all, it's about a restaurant. So they had to lean into that. So Bravo took their time, I think, deciding what they wanted the show to be. And they listened and they watched. And a lot of those shows also, Housewives too, like they pick up the contract based on what the audience thinks. Like it's
right.
We're creating our own show kind of, and it's ironic because half the time people get fired and then we want them back 2 seconds later, like a Tamra kind of situation. I feel like a lot of people are missing her when all last year everyone was like, get rid of Tamra. So it goes both ways, and I think it's probably a hard decision for the people who actually do decide how to cast these shows. Like, when do we cut the ties, and like when do we listen to the audience too much? Like, can we give them too much power? Like, what do they know that we don't know? But Jax and Brittany, I am fairly confident that they were not asked back, fired, and because they've been on the show Jax has been on the show for 8 years, Brittany for 4, they let them announce it in their own way and to present it like that. And it's a nice idea, but we all see through it now. Like it's happened enough times. Like we've lost enough housewives to know that, like, come on, like, you're not walking away from this show. Jax and Brittany are about to have a kid. They make so much money doing absolutely nothing. And Jax pretending he wants to like be serious now. Like, okay.
Totally. When he like replied to someone on Instagram or whatever and was like, I'm 41 and I have a baby on the way. Like, this is it for me. I was kind of like, I don't know though. Cause like people, I don't know. I think of like Jersey Shore. Like,
yeah, totally. They found a way. I mean, I'm grateful as a viewer because I love Vanderpump Rules. Like the first couple seasons, like seasons like 1 through 4 are just like Oh, so rewatchable, such good reality TV. It's kind of like how I used to feel about The Hills and stuff before, like everyone learned it was all fake.
Yeah.
Like, but I genuinely believe, because there's periods of times when certainly these cast members don't talk to each other, and then they see each other for the first time, and you can tell it's real. And these were real friends, and you can feel that as a viewer. And like, not that I don't like, kind of more fake reality shows. I like it all, but there is something nice about this show, and their emotions were so real. And I remember at BravoCon last year, Stassi, Katie, and Kristen were in like a big fight. And Stassi and Katie were on like one team, and they weren't mad at Kristen. And I spoke to Stassi and Katie together, and they were like looking around for Kristen. Like I felt like I was in an episode of the show, and I was like, is this awkward? And they were like, yes, it is. And like, it was like, I could feel the tension. It was real. And then like, I talked to Kristen after that, and she was like rolling her, pretending not to care, but really she wanted to know what they said about her. Like it felt like the show. So there was something that was so, I mean, they're trash people, but it was something so magic about that show. And it's been lost for a while now, because it's so obvious it's a show, but there were still highlights. Now it's like, I didn't want to see them all pregnant, to be honest, because that's not what I go to these people for. Like, this is not what I'm looking for. So I'm happy they're gone, because I didn't want to watch it, but I also just kind of wish the show ended. Like, I don't know if I care about anyone left enough. Like I will always love Sheena Shea for the ridiculousness she's given me, but I think I can just check in on her like Instagram every once in a while. Like, I don't know if I need these people on my TV anymore.
Totally. That was my next question, because I feel like they're doing what they've done with Grey's Anatomy, when it's like,
I watched that too.
me too. Yeah, more or less. But it's like all your main characters are leaving, just like end the show on like a high note. Like I feel like a lot of shows have done that really well, but it seems like, yeah, they're just going to continue on without all of these key players. Like, how do you think that's going to like fare for the show?
You know, what's so interesting is like last season I didn't hate it. It got a lot of flack because they introduced a lot of new people, but they still kept all of the old people, and they interacted a little bit, but you really felt like you were watching two different shows. And I didn't necessarily love either show. They both had highlights, but like, I didn't die for the new people. Like, I'm not dying to know what they're up to right now. I don't follow any of them on Instagram. Like, I don't really care. But at the same time, when I was watching the older people, I was like, all right, like, how many times over the years are we going to have this fight? Like, maybe you're 40 years old and you should just let this toxic friendship go. Like, it's kind of sad to watch them now when we've been watching the same storyline for all this time. So I didn't know what they were. I was very interested before the show fell apart because of all of their behavior off camera. I had no idea what they were going to do. Like, I was interested to see if they were going to lean into the old or the new, because it wasn't working with both. I think that was like a universal opinion. So, and it actually ended very kind of poetically for the old people. Like, they like had like a slowed down version of the theme song, and like everyone kind of walking away from each other. And we've seen that things have changed already. Like, certain people have made up off camera, but like, I just feel like we would have ended it. It's like it's like a circle. So I think it would have been nice to end it, but they're just leaning into it. And I don't know what they're going to do. And I think they're just going to try to revamp it next generation style. And I don't think it's going to last very long.
I know. I feel like it's kind of like The Hills, like when Lauren left and then they brought in Kristen, and then it lasted one season.
Right. And there are highlights from that one season, but it was never the same, and you can't create that. And I think it'll be similar, and it's kind of sad because you want to go out on top, but technically if they stop now, they went out when half the cast was fired for being racist. That's not exactly on top either. So I think if they wanted to go out on top, it would have ended a couple of years ago. So we're at this weird thing. It's like, people are still going to watch it. It's a very highly rated show on Bravo. As far as Us Weekly is concerned, everyone on that show does really well for us numbers wise. So that's why we cover it so much. Like, there's a reason we're covering these people. So I don't know, but I'm unfortunately going to be watching.
I think it's one of the shows that I will start to binge. It really reminds me of Shaws of Sunset. Do you watch that show?
I don't like regularly. Like, I know the players and I know some of the things, but like, I have to draw the line somewhere. But I've heard such good things about Shaws. It's just like I missed it when it was started, so I have to catch up. But
totally, I think that it's very, very similar because they were all friends beforehand as well. So a lot of the situations are like actually real. And just like you said with Vanderpump Rules, like they'll make up off air or have a fight off air, and then it'll like trickle down into the show. So it's really fun to watch.
Did you like Shaw's? Because I know there was all that stuff with like MJ and Reza that kind of trickled into real life, and the restraining order, and like it got really serious, and like some of the insults and stuff exchanged were like really dark. And I feel like it was hit or miss on whether people liked it or not. And like if they're going to continue with that show too, like did you like how serious and stuff it got, or were you like, are you over it? Do you think it should keep going?
I don't want to say I enjoyed watching this past season, but I did watch it and it was like fascinating to watch. I wouldn't say it was like enjoyable. I think now I've enjoyed all of the characters so much. I've learned so much about like Persian culture, and like it's just been such a great show for me. And I've really admired their friendships. Like some of them are like 20, 30 years of friendship. I think with this past season, it was so ugly and so gross that I think I just am not rooting for anybody. Whereas before, I like personally liked all of them. And now
Vanderpump has similar things too. Like it's like they're too mean to each other. I mean, I don't know if I was ever rooting for any of them because they're all kind of horrible, but you definitely could find yourself more like into it versus like, and then it was like, oh, like we're way too old for this like catty stuff. Like it's weird now.
Totally. And it's the same with Shaw's. They're like in their 40s. So some of it I'm like, man, if I'm having these like fights when I'm 40, this is like a huge reflection on your life. But yeah, I don't think I root for any of them or like personally like any of them anymore, but it's still really good TV.
I get that.
Yeah, which is like dark, I feel, but
yeah, but it's a lot of Bravo celebrities, I think, more specifically, whereas The Bachelor, because the cast is ever changing, like you don't ever really get attached, so you never have to like make a choice on whether you're still going to support them. Like they're just kind of reality stars on their camera. With Bravo, they're so like you follow them for so many years that by the end you usually end up hating all of them, which is kind of sad because you must love them so much.
Totally. I know. And you're watching the show for like a different reason and yeah, through a different light. So last question. What's next for Brittany and Jax?
Wow, the loaded $1 million question. Marriage boot camp for sure. Everyone goes on marriage boot camp when they need a quick paycheck.
Yeah.
And they actually have problems that would lend themselves to that show versus like when you have random bachelor couples go on and you're like, you're not married, or like you're one, not married, or two, you are married and you've been married for like a day. So I don't know if you should have these problems yet, but like on Jax and Brittany, I mean, we've got infidelity, we've got lying, you know, it's all there. So the roots are there and they would shine on that show. Other than that, I mean, I think in like 5 years, they're going to be living in Florida where Jax is from, or Kentucky with Brittany's family with like 2 or 3 kids already. She's going to keep popping them out and they'll get divorced eventually, which is dark. But I think.
Oh, wow. I did not see that. I thought you were going to be like, they're going to have a new TV show. It's going to be like.
No.
Be Central. Oh.
Well, I think they're all leaning into the fact that Lala and Randall, like Randall's a producer and stuff, but I don't think Randall's going to waste his Hollywood connections and money giving these people a reality show. Like, I think that that's what people say they want it, but like, do any of us really want to watch Stassi, Lala, Brittany pregnant and like Tom and Katie still fighting and trying to get pregnant? Like, I don't think anyone else actually want to watch that. And if they do, it'll be a version, like it'll be on like WeTV or like YouTube TV, like not, and that's not like, I shouldn't be shitting, like that's like whatever, like good for anyone who has a show, but like it's kind of like when Kendra left E and did the new version on WeTV, like it was never the same. So I think it could be, they maybe get like a WeTV show that lasts for like a second, but I think overall they're gonna fade away, and I'm fascinated to see what relationships from that show, friendships and romantic relationships, stay together, because there were so many ties to that show. Like when someone broke up, you saw them the next day. So I think that's a reason Jax and Brittany stayed together and got married, was because she moved to LA and was integrated into his world and the show. So I don't know. It's horrible to wish that on. I don't wish it. I'm just predicting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like sometimes with these reality TV stars, we want to watch them in the context that they're presented to us, like Vanderpump Rules, but like on their own per se, we don't really care. So
yeah. And I think I think people overestimate how much they care. Like I guarantee you anything that you are going to miss from Vanderpump Rules that are the people aren't on the show. Like, yeah, I'm sure, like, you know, Stassi was hilarious. There were definitely moments like that were great, but like, if you like her that much and follow her on Instagram or listen to her podcast or read her books, like you're still going to get your fix. There's a way to get these people. And I'm sure a network will try to give them and take advantage of it, but I don't think it'll work. but that's maybe all wrong. Watch them go on to have like a 10-season show. Just like damn you, Sarah from Us Weekly.
Like a new version of Nick and Jessica or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, they wish. They could never.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was really fun.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we solved so many problems in the world.
It was like a whirlwind. Like, I feel like I just talked a mile a minute for an hour.
I know. I feel like I talk fast. There's so much to be said. And these reality stars, it's like, I don't want to give them this much of my life, but I already have at this point. So why not lean into it? So thank you for letting me.
I agree. Where can people find you on social media and listen to your podcast, read your stuff on us, etc.?
Yes, we do 2 podcasts, Us Weekly Hot Hollywood, which is like a news recap, kind of similar to this. We go through the biggest stories of the week, comes out every Thursday, lean into what's in the magazine and just kind of share. My 2 co-hosts, Gwen and Travis, have been at Us for a really long time. So they have like Travis has been in the bathroom at the Met Ball. Like he's like seen things. So he can give that kind of, he's a reporter. So he has that perspective. And I'm like the writer on the team and the youngest one. So I kind of go through that side of it. And then I do the Bachelor podcast, Here for the Right Reasons, whatever day after the Bachelor comes out. So we're on Wednesdays right now, but then when Smash Jam season, we'll be back on Tuesdays. And that's like a recap interview, kind of just depending on who I get as the guest, if it's which either way it goes. But yeah, and then I'm on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff at Sarah Hearon. And if you click on a story on Us Weekly about any of these people that we just talked about, you'll probably see my name.
I love it. Thanks again so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Sarah, for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the pod. If you did, leave a 5-star rating for RTBP on Apple Podcasts and follow along on social media at RTBP Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We also have a listener Facebook group, so go check that out. I hope that you're thriving, that you're healthy, safe, and sound. As always, I'm your host, Torry, and I am ready to be petty. See you soon. Bye.